Every factory, refinery, power station, and industrial setting has at least one thing in common. No matter what they make, or process, or do, behind the scenes, they basically all share one feature: automation. Whether it's software control and safety systems, valves and actuators, or measurement instrumentation, automation controls all the things that people don't. Whether you're working with energy, chemicals, mining, or even food, there's a wealth of automation tools keeping the machinery firing and the operations moving forward. So when we think about reducing emissions in industry, those controls are an essential common thread, bringing us to Spartan Controls. Spartan Controls has been providing customers with solutions, expertise, and support for almost 60 years. If anyone has ideas to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in automation, it's Spartan Controls. So we sat down with Nannette Ho-Covernton and Brian Van Vliet from Spartan Controls to discuss reducing emissions in industry, the power of automation, and hitting 100 million tons of reductions in Western Canada by 2030. Here on Carbon Copy.
Hi, I'm Nannette Ho-Covernton. I'm the sustainability leader here at Spartan Controls. I've been with the company for just over 28 and a half years. I know it's amazingly long, but I started out as inside sales at Spartan and then grew into an outside sales role. And 3 years ago, Spartan decided to invest more wholly into sustainability.
Hi, my name is Brian Van Vliet, and I work as the Manager of Environmental Solutions. And so our focus at Spartan in that area is specifically on reducing GHGs, improving air quality, water innovation, and energy efficiency.
Brian and I have been working together for 15 years, or 15 and a half years now, all in this sustainability space. So it's been a great relationship so far.
Very exciting. Now, I actually may ask you a question or two about being in the sustainability space a little bit later, but I'll start off, if I may be so bold as to say, Spartan Controls is a very well-known company here in Western Canada, particularly in Alberta, and is somewhat of a household name in the industrial automation space. But aside from being my favorite type of apple, can you tell me what Spartan is and what the organization is all about?
So Spartan has been in the industrial automation space for 60 years. So we've celebrated our 60th anniversary last November, and we're happy to celebrate our existence in 14 different locations in Western Canada. And so I think it's important to share that we're involved in not just the energy industry, we're involved in all 14 different types of industries in Western Canada, from pulp and paper to mining of precious metals like gold and copper, as well as minerals like potash and fertilizer, to water treatment, and of course serving our two largest cities in Alberta, Calgary and Edmonton. And then of course the chemical industry with the manufacturing of plastics, power generation for homes and offices, refining complexes for fuel production like gasoline, and even the entire oil and gas sector. So pretty cool space, and looking forward to where this takes us and for another 60 years.
Yeah, impressive breadth and longevities. Congratulations on the 60th anniversary. I heard on another podcast with your CEO, Grant Wild, who mentioned that Spartan Controls, in partnership with your customers, of course, can lay claim to more than 4 megatons of greenhouse gas reductions on a CO2 equivalent basis annually. So if you flip through the Rolodex of technologies that Spartan Controls develops and provides to customers, can you maybe talk about the subset of those that are related to greenhouse gas reductions, and what are some of the key technologies in your climate action arsenal?
For sure. So we have quite a range of technologies that still roll up as part of that total, but it's made of a few that are the major contributors. So a lot of the work that we did for over 25 years now has been on optimized combustion efficiency. And so we have a technology called REMView AFR, so air-fuel ratio control. And in that, we can achieve fuel gas savings that are typically in the 15% range. And when we optimize the engine's performance at a compressor station, then we're also able to improve the air quality that comes out the tailpipe because we have reduced NOx emissions. So that's a major contributor. That's over 8 megatons of our cumulative to date. That's now over 22 megatons. And if we look at other contributions, we would have support from things that have been shifted from pneumatic control loops. So lots of upstream oil and gas pneumatic control loops have operated on fuel gas. And now those are being switched over to be operated on instrument air, and the devices that are using that fuel gas are also venting less every day to do the same job as they used to do, decades ago. So it's an improvement in the technology, but fundamentally the process control loop still works just as it used to. Another form of major GHG reduction that we have is with a technology called slipstream, where we have vent gas capture. So even if you have these emissions that are still happening, if we can collect those emissions and we can use the vented gas to do work, then it's a form of having a net zero outcome, which is pretty awesome. So that's, we often have the approach there with optimization and vent capture or vent elimination at the point source.
Now, I understand that Spartan Controls and ERA, the organization I work with, have worked together both directly and indirectly over a number of years, going back, in fact, to the early days of our organization, and more recently through our Energy Savings for Business programs, more specifically in a program we called SPEED, or Small Producers Energy Efficiency Deployment. Can you talk about your involvement in that program and what you did in your participation with that program?
For sure. So the SPEED program has been a great enabler. It was a $12 million funding call that was focused on air-fuel ratio control, high-efficiency engines, and pump jack electrification. So we were definitely zeroed right in on the AFR control. And it has been instrumental to accelerating the energy efficiency emission reduction of that technology in the oil and gas sector. So that the funding has enabled the deployment of the technology with companies that would not otherwise have moved as fast and as broad without the technology deployment. So the ERA funding drives excitement and discussion on the emission reductions, which further educates the industry on the GHG goals and solutions available to meet them. The funding is essential to continue to provide momentum in the oil and gas industry to achieve its reduction targets. So in that context, Spartan is now progressing with customers to improve the performance of their compressor stations, combustion engines, with multiple approaches that are now improving the NOx outcomes and reducing emissions that are equivalent to about 3,000 to 4,000 cars off the road, with a cost that's between $20 and $30 per ton. So $20 to $30 per ton is pretty attractive when we think about the current book value as well of $65 per ton as of April 1st this year.
So based on those numbers, including the installations and the greenhouse gas benefits, as well as the cost for implementation on a dollars per ton basis, it sounds like that particular line of technology is what you might call a success. Is that fair to say?
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of field experience that's been gained over the decades. Engines are not all alike. They could have the same make and model, but the way they're operated can be quite different. And so it's really important to have that field experience to be able to apply the best approach and to really optimize its performance, having been there and done that before.
Okay, so then building on that success and previous successes that you've had, what would you say is next for the broader, you say, REMView, AFR, air-fuel ratio control, or slipstream, even pump jack control technologies as a whole? Can we expect to see, with an attractive cost of implementation like that on a dollar per ton basis with increasing carbon pricing, can we expect to see further proliferation of the technology across the energy industry?
For sure. So there's easily over 3,000 more engines that could be optimized just like this. And if we're going to be achieving compliance underneath the multi-sector air pollutant regulations in Canada by January 1st, 2026, a lot of these engines actually have to have a 4 gram per kilowatt hour performance rating on NOx. So there's some imminent regulatory requirements, and there's going to be a lot of upgrading that needs to happen ahead of that window. Even beyond that window, if we look at the broader context of the lower 48, for example, or international opportunities, there are thousands more stationary combustion engines just like these two, or we can apply some Canadian know-how internationally to improve the broader impact in their operating areas too.
And what about beyond these technologies specifically? Can you talk, what are some of the next big things for Spartan Controls in the broader greenhouse gas reduction space, or even outside of the greenhouse gas reduction space? I know you work on a lot of really cool things.
For sure. So you had touched on pump jack electrification, for example. So Spartan is providing now high efficiency electric motors and variable frequency drives as well. So these are now part of the electrification of a lot of our control loops that we have in industrial applications. A lot of old control loops used to be pneumatic, and increasingly they're becoming electric. A lot of what we're going to do too in the future in terms of energy savings and GHG reduction will be centered on energy efficiency holistically, and that is another major contributor to our cumulative impact we've had to date. So we can look at industrial energy efficiency as it comes to the use of energy as a source. So that could be energy in the form of natural gas that's being used for any kind of heating cycles, any waste heat recovery we can do. There's lots of steam optimization. Electrification as well is very relevant in those industrial operating locations. So again, we're going to continue focusing on those areas, and it's a multifaceted conversation as we improve energy efficiency. Enercan has highlighted before too that energy management information systems can easily achieve, when you watch, again for control, when you watch for energy instead of just process throughput, you can achieve energy savings between 5 and 15%. That's pretty typical. And so when you think about megatons of impact from these large industrial facilities, 5 to 15% is actually a really big number.
So that's one of our new ventures, actually. We've started up a company called Blue Marvel, which is our software division, and they've developed this energy management information system, so EMIS is what we call it. And so we're very excited about what this opportunity brings for Spartan Controls and for our community, because it's in demand right now, because every facility needs to watch how they're expanding their resources, whether or not it's energy, water, or anything else. Another fun venture for us is we recently got to work with an energy distributor in California and looking at a hydrogen blending system. So looking at energy of the future is another thing that we're looking at. So that's one of my key mandates as a sustainability leader. You know, I have 6 spokes within my framework. There's people, well-being, community, and people's at the top of our globe. So our graphic is a globe. And on the bottom is industry and education, purposely on the bottom, because without industry and education, we have nothing to support our world. And supporting that obviously is innovation and environment. And so I spend a lot of time in the innovation ecosystem, working with different industry groups and associations, just to make sure that we're hearing correctly from our customers what their challenges are that they need us to address. So.
And Nan, would you say that the ground-up support also carries through at things like carbon capture and storage?
You had to have one pun in there, didn't you? Yes, it does, Brian, for sure.
I like that. I love it. Okay, so if you don't mind asking to elaborate a little bit on sort of the sense of scale, you've talked already about kind of this current number of around 4.5 megatons on an annual basis of greenhouse gas reductions. And you talked about a little bit some of the opportunities where you can go in the future. Can you give me a sense for what the size of the prize is? And you can use whatever frame of reference you feel comfortable, whether it's within Alberta or within Western Canada or just within the Spartan Controls repertoire. Where do you think you could go by, let's say, 2030 or 2035, for example?
We've taken a look and assessed the current situation with all the different processes that we support in Western Canada. And we feel that we can hit a target of 100 megatons by 2030. And that's just taking a look at our existing solutions that we have to support Western Canada. And so if we look at 100 megatons, that's significant when you look at a national number.
Sure. We think that aligns really well with Canada's goals too, as we have a net zero by 2050, and we're achieving 75% methane plus reductions in the upstream oil and gas industry by 2030. Right now, Spartan's emissions, our current pace is about 5% of Canada's emission reductions that we've achieved so far. So we're pretty proud of that, and if we can continue to achieve 5% with Canada's further reduction goals, then we feel like we're really doing our part, and we would love to see that percentage even grow above 5% as we continue to maintain focus on this.
Carbon Copy is brought to you by Emissions Reduction Alberta. ERA takes action on climate change and supports economic growth by investing in clean technology solutions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, lower costs, attract investment, and create jobs here in Alberta. These investments help innovators develop and demonstrate technology that can lower emissions at home and be exported all over the world. That's why we've committed almost $800 million to 220 projects worth a total of $6.5 billion. To learn more, visit eralberta.ca.
If I go back to what you mentioned a little bit earlier, Nannette, I know you've both been working with Spartan Controls for a number of years, and both actually working together for a handful of years, and both very involved in sustainability. So maybe a question I'd love to get both of your takes on this. I'm curious how the discussion around sustainability has changed and evolved from when you first started in the industry and at the organization.
I think if I look at industry, Mark, I don't think anybody knew how to spell sustainability back when I first joined the company 28.5 years ago. They're like, what? Sustain what? And now we know what sustainability is, or we're growing to understand what that means. And then we actually have metrics to measure it against. And if you, I don't know how closely you follow news releases from IFRS, but as of today, the ISSB standards are out for the 500 different points you have to measure and report on your ESG matrices. So it's changed a lot. The focus has changed a lot, but our company has always had sustainability in the forefront. It may not have been that word, but if we look back to our founders in 1963, it was always something that we had to do. It was ingrained as part of our culture to look at how to develop technology with the future in mind. Mark, if we look at ESG holistically, it has definitely matured over the years. We're seeing it far more integrated into our day-to-day activities and lives. The value of carbon is regulated and is increasing annually. And we're also seeing greater collaboration in how we approach improving environmental outcomes, where more information and learnings are shared, and including failures. And then we're also seeing greater accountability, ESG accountability, corporately, to achieve specific and measurable goals like emission management, energy management, combustion management, electrification, and enterprise data, all within Spartan's portfolio. All this isn't achievable without conducting a baseline exercise in order to set our collective reasonable and timely goals.
For sure, and I'd highlight too, even in my career, I remember when I was at the U of A doing mechanical engineering, I had a safety and loss management class I took in my last year, and a lot of that was focused on basically mitigating risk and ultimately loss prevention. And there's a highlight there with Bhopal, the incident that we had in India. There were thousands of people that died with that release. I think there was about 500,000 people that were impacted. And the idea of responsible care carried through as well in the petrochemical industry. Now I think there's a lot of similarities between sustainability and responsible care, that there's this desire to improve outcomes, not because we have this extremely negative event that happened that killed thousands of people, but because we in this world ultimately live on this one planet and we have to have responsible care for it. Mm-hmm. So this is just another angle to, again, improve those outcomes.
And if we look at Spartan's vision statement, it's creating a modern, sustainable world, right? And so we just carry on with that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard on more than one occasion the employees of Spartan Controls are referred to as Spartans. Can you talk about that a bit? Is that a reflection of a collaborative environment and camaraderie amongst the team, and that essence of sustainability permeating through the organization?
For sure. It is, I don't know. We even have a nickname for second generation Spartans called Spartlets. So that culture and it starts with, because we're an employee owned company. And so when you're working for your own company and you're getting serviced by an owner, it's just a different kind of mentality. And so that entrepreneurship, that leadership has always been part of our culture. It's our one. And so we actually even have some of our work that we're doing is called One Spartan, just to ensure that we actually have a collective, collaborative space for all of us to get together.
For sure. And we weren't called tartan for a reason. Even though sometimes when we raise the environmental profile, sometimes you have to lift the cover, but it's really good that we were embracing the vigor and the rigorous nature of our company as Spartans, right? That idea that goes back 2,000 years.
I'm just even thinking about how the name Spartan came about, right? So if you look at the name Spartan, it refers to the Greek times, and and then there also the connotation of Spartan, of being practical and pragmatic. There were also warriors and just got things done. And so again, part of our culture, this was ingrained to you right in the beginning. We're always having to be responsive. We have to be knowledgeable, and we have to be committed to serving our customers and the community.
Yeah, I think part of the commitment is to each other as well, that when we make improvements for our customers in industry, we share these learnings, and we're proud of the accomplishments that we've had with industry, that we celebrate that. It's really important that this doesn't live in an isolation. There's pockets of this information that we definitely try to raise the profile of in our organization and with the industry associations that we're part of. It's really, I think, something that we're proud of. The Canadian industry here is something hopefully we have common regard for, and ultimately that Canadian know-how has a lot of empowerment in the world, and we want to continue to do our part to raise that as Canada does its part too.
Yeah, we're involved in like 65 different community groups and associations. And then as far as industry groups and associations, we've got engagement in over 60. And then as far as the post-secondary institutions, we've got engagement in almost all post-secondaries in Western Canada. So to us, being a stalwart in the community, what's the word I'm looking for? When you stick your flag in the ground, that's our flag.
It's a mooring that we're holding.
There we go.
To, right?
Hopefully this gets edited out.
Yeah, but a lot of this honestly is achievable only with our customers, right? It's that community, and we value that community, and then none of this can be done with just Spartan, right? It takes a whole group of folks collaborating to improve these outcomes. No one company could do this on their own.
And the community includes groups like the ERA, and also our industry groups like the PTAC and CRIN and COSIA. We all need to have a common goal in order to achieve what we need to achieve.
So building on that community element, I'm aware that both of you in particular are heavily involved in the broader clean tech community and ecosystem. Brian, I've had conversations with you about the Calgary Biomass Utilization Group, for example, and Nannette, you and I... CBUG. Nannette, you and I have both spent time helping to design the Carbon Tech Expo program as part of the World Petroleum Congress coming to Calgary this September. And you're also involved in the Clean Resources Innovation Network, CRIN, as you mentioned. Can you each talk about maybe some of the really exciting things that you're involved in this broader community?
I'll let you start.
For sure, yeah. So I mean, one of my roles is as a co-chair of the PTAC TIERI committee. And so in that focus too, we're improving environmental outcomes. It's a good collaborative, again, framework that we have folks at the table that are, again, there to share and also to learn. So it's just a great format to be able to exchange those ideas, very much like we had with CBUG. I'm also in volunteering with is with the Alberta Chamber of Resources. I am chairing the Enviro subcommittee, and we've got an event that's coming up here on October 4th as well that'll continue to have focus on maybe alternative energy uses that we're going to have that are going to be reducing, again, the environmental impact of industrial processes.
So I have a fairly lengthy list as well. So I co-lead the digital oil and gas theme for Clean Resource Innovation Network with my colleague Heather Herring. And so it's one of the 7 themes that's being looked at to ensure that we're the last barrel, shall we call it. And the goal of CRIN is to have the cleanest energy source for the world. So involved with that, we're funding 6 projects through the CRIN funding. So they are being showcased right now through the Project Cafe, and then we'll have a digital conference coming up on October 18th, co-hosted between PTAC and CRIN. So look out for that. With respect to the World Petroleum Congress, I'm very excited about that. Our section that we're working on, Mark, is the new energy future. So we've got 4 different sessions. The first session is going to be started off by Brian Helfenbaum. He's going to talk about net zero energy systems, and then he'll have a panel. And then the other 3 panels are around electrification, around hydrogen, and of course the circular economy. And so we've brought in experts from around the world to speak at those panels on Thursday, September 24th. Although World Petroleum Congress is being held from the 17th to the 21st, but mine is particularly on the 21st. Reason being is that particular day we're inviting a whole bunch of high school students to join us at World Petroleum Congress. And so I think it's a great day for them to learn about what our new energy future could look like.
Yeah, I think we'll be building on some of the energy that we had with the Global Energy show as well. So we had the Emission Reduction Theater, and that's an organization we're involved with as well that helped facilitate that. So call it Jackson Hegland and the Methane Emission Leadership Alliance. Lots of great work is being done in this space too from a bunch of companies that are out there either doing detection or providing services or solutions too that help mitigate methane consequences.
One of the elements of your work we didn't talk about is hydrogen, but I understand you're involved in this space. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I think there's a lot of good work that's being done in that space as, again, we're reducing the carbon impact of our natural gas supply chain. So as we get into hydrogen blending applications, as Nan mentioned earlier, as we get into full-on switching where you could start a burner train on fuel gas and you could actually switch it to be running exclusively on hydrogen. This is the future, and these are the solutions that we're working on with our combustion efficiency team as well as we, again, reduce the carbon impact of our means of energy supply, and it shifts over towards a hydrogen feedstock instead.
Yeah, so we now have combustion units that work on 100% hydrogen.
For sure. Yeah, it's neat that you can work full on, even with the same burner, that you can actually switch your fuel supplies.
And we've had some really cool things going on with our energy management side, where we're actually working with a cool chocolate manufacturing facility in the U.S. So they're wanting to make sure that your chocolate chips are done effectively and efficiently, or made effectively and efficiently.
I think it's important that both of you have some quality control sample testing in that area.
Yeah,
would you like to join us?
Yeah, and we were engaged with a technology called BrewView too. So if you wanted to have a beverage that goes along with your chocolate, we could probably mix those two, and both appreciate the improved outcomes and more sustainable approaches to delivering those goods.
So
it's an important job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So that leads to, Brian Helfenbaum and I have had a number of conversations. This may be cut out eventually, but he loves chocolate and beer, and so we do chocolate and beer occasionally when we meet up, and so this might be a great occasion to be able to do that both at the same time.
To close things off, is there anything I didn't ask you today or you didn't get a chance to talk about that you'd want our listeners to know? Any final words?
We're saying that of all the work that remains to be completed, it can be done cost effectively with the carrots and sticks available, and of course the solutions, expert services, and applied technology available today.
I'd offer that a lot of companies are embracing this journey today. A lot of it comes down, though, to understanding what they're needing to deal with. So having that regulatory clarity is really important for them and for ultimately society to move forward. And then in the context that they know where they need to go, then they don't need to be afraid about this journey like crossing the desert, right? There's ways, we have tools to get across that space. You don't have to be taking every step yourself. You don't have to be riding a camel, waiting for your oasis, right? There's ways that we can maybe hop in a hot air balloon and you can soar over some of these challenging locations. But ultimately, if you cross the desert and you arrive at the ocean on the other side, hey, there's hopefully palm trees there too, and we can be embracing the completion of the journey and really looking forward to that next step at that point too. So I don't think industry is shying away from this one at all, and I think we need to continue to face it head on. I think it's really an important takeaway. It's one of the learnings I had even from engagement with Indigenous folks, that a lot of the respect for the buffalo is that the buffalo is one of the few animals that actually runs right into the storm because they get through faster on the other side. So it's a pretty cool takeaway as well from that culture.
Well, thank you both very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We really appreciate being asked to be here today and look forward to what next appears for all of us.
For sure, and I look forward to collaborating with our audience here on this podcast and ultimately continuing to take these steps. This journey is far from complete, and I appreciate all the effort that goes towards improving environmental outcomes. Thank you.
Did we promise someone a hot air balloon ride there, Brian?
I think so.
It could be with an optimized combustion burner tip.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
A solution for every activity you have ready to undertake.
As long as we're not blowing off hot air, though, that wouldn't be so good.